Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another program of Magnify Your Impact. And this morning, I'm very privileged to interview a great friend of mine who's a real inspiration. Most people have one particular focus in their lives, or many of us do, and we go through our career becoming experts in one particular field. And this gentleman has one of the most unique abilities that I've ever met, to be able to master a number of different elements within his life and still create that impact at a really, really high level. So it's a privilege to introduce Nathan Farrugia from Malta. And Nathan, I met a number of years ago, and he really inspires me in a number of ways, in that he started life as a physiotherapist, done an enormous amount with regards to helping really senior people within Malta and within the world. He is an incredible athlete. He's run 27 marathons in 27 days, which I want to find so much more about with Nathan. He's a high performance coach. He runs an organization that supports a number of different coaches within the country. He is head of Vistage International in Malta, which really inspires a lot of different CEOs, not just on the island, but around Europe, and is part of a number of different networks at a leadership level. So Nathan, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You make me blush.
Well, I was going to say that I think it's interesting because you have an opportunity, I think, to introduce people in two different ways. Either you are very formal and you read out the official introduction, or you just introduce people from my heart. And so it comes across a little bit informal, but I always finish these introductions, Nathan, thinking that I haven't done it justice. So Nathan, I know that you've inspired many people on the island and worked with a number of CEOs to really navigate their organizations to success, as well as, running, as I said earlier, 27 marathons in 27 days. So you're a high performance athlete, you're a physiotherapist, you do so much work with charities, you have so many senior people on the island looking to you for inspiration and guidance as to how to grow and develop. There's so many different things you've done in your career. Can you just give us a 2-minute potted history as to where you've come from, if you can put your career into 2 minutes so far, and then just give us an idea of where you guys are today? Where is your organization and where is your work today?
Yeah, as you said, I started in the sort of health sector because I as an athlete myself, when I was younger, I wanted to know more about the human body and how it functioned and how to best enhance performance. But then as I became an entrepreneur and set up a number of clinics and grew my client base, I started to involve myself more in the leadership side of things, where you're helping others grow and you're helping others hone their skills and develop themselves. And that really triggered my interest in leadership. So I moved out of the health sector and moved into hospitality because there was a great opportunity for me to move into an establishment that was nurturing leaders and helping them grow by running various departments, as it were. It was a 5-star leading hotel here in Malta, which I eventually ended up managing their health spa. So that was sort of my experience of leadership, which really sort of set me on the course of developing that side of me. And through connections and friends and also charity work, I ended up getting involved in one of Malta's leading, at the time, relatively small organizations that helped people with disabilities. Obviously, having a background in therapy, it allowed me to have a better understanding of how the organization functioned. But at the same time, it was an opportunity for me to go in as a new CEO and to a certain extent, form my own personal leadership style. And obviously, being in a non-profit organization, you have a very different viewpoint on your reason to get out of bed in the morning. Your ikigai is very different to being a CEO of a corporate. So the values intrinsic to my leadership style were fortunately formed at that time, which was great because obviously since then I've moved into the corporate world, but those values remained. So my leadership approach of being principle-centered is something that I developed and grew as a charity of a non-profit organization, but serves me well today in running different businesses. 15 years of working in the non-profit world. We became eventually the largest non-profit organization in the country, supporting parents and children with disabilities, as well as being a voice for inclusion in the workplace and at school. for all children with difficulties. So that's I'm very proud of the work we did at Inspire, which is the organization. But as we were saying before we came onto this chat, every now and then you get this urge to do something different. I had worked in the UK. I had taken a sabbatical, well, actually 3-year sabbatical in the middle of those 15 years to run programs in London for non-profit organizations there, and eventually came back to Malta. Probably the sun more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But yeah, about sort of 5-6 years ago, I wanted to see if I could go back to my original entrepreneurial life, which is where I started out. Instead of building clinics, however, it was providing coaching to CEOs, executive coaching to CEOs. So we started that off. I got involved in Vistage first as a member. It's very lonely at the top, so it's good to have peers to learn from and to be able to network with. And I got a lot of benefit out of Vistage personally. So I thought, one best way to give back is to become Vistage in Malta and support the people who are struggling like I was, to try and figure out how best to run their business in a good way, in an ethical way, as well as generate a good bottom line and be able to empower their employees and work well as leaders. So Vistage became the focus. Around that, obviously, then you have the various programs we ran for CEOs within their businesses. That's the executive coaching side of things. So, typically I'd work with a CEO, help them, they realize the benefit and say, you need to come and work with my team. And so we sort of grew our business organically in that way. One of my clients, in fact, was a software company, one of Malta's leading software companies, and the owner wanted to take a back seat from the executive role, but his next in line were still being developed, and I was working with them to get them up to scratch to eventually, hopefully, run the business. But as it happens, I also stepped in as CEO for this time to be able to help bridge that gap. So I'm spending half my time running as CEO the software company, whilst obviously making sure that all the other stuff is being done by a very capable team. So I have people running those sides, those businesses too. So it's great. I mean, it's great because it's diverse. We're talking about boredom being the main opposition to getting into flow and excitement and challenge. So I'm making sure I'm staying well away from getting bored.
So Nathan, there's a huge amount there, and I think an amazing place for me to start to really understand more about your internal strengths and your psychology. I'm fascinated by how it is you started where you are, and to get to where you are today, you've achieved a huge amount. And you say it like it's, you're so calm in your voice, you just say it, but everything that you've achieved is amazing. So when you were young, or when you first started your career, where do you think this drive came from?
I think if I reflect back, a very interesting story around the fact that I was diagnosed with asthma as a very young child. So what happened was that, at 5 years old, I was told by the medical profession that I couldn't do stuff. Yeah, I was told I couldn't play, I couldn't climb trees, I couldn't go camping, I have to avoid dust, I couldn't have sleepovers because they might have different pillows. I couldn't have pets. So this imposition on me of what you cannot do came very early in life. And thankfully, my parents took the approach of saying, okay, rather than let's look at what you can't do, let's look at what you can do. And they really sort of pushed me towards exploring my hidden talents, exploring my skills, and testing myself continuously to see if that's something that I could do rather than something that I couldn't do. So rather than take for granted, oh, you better not try that because you probably get an asthma attack, they were of the opinion that I should try it and keep my medication close hand and have a go. And so this sort of mindset of whenever someone says you can't do something, try and find a way to do it, became a bit of a mantra, even for a young adult. So it also can land you into a lot of trouble because, also we have authority telling you what you can and cannot do. And that means that you try and circumvent and go around that. Or previous, managers of mine telling me what I can and cannot do and me going and breaking stuff just to be contrary. So it's a character trait that I think served me well, but also got me into a few pickles. But at the end of the day, even when I did fail, there was an opportunity to learn from that failure and recognize that sometimes other people's advice should be heeded and is valuable. But it's about the balance and finding out, where you fit within that.
That's a really powerful mantra that, when you feel that, to look at not what you can't do, but what you can do. When things get tough, what do you tell yourself to say we can do it? Is there a process? Would you go for a run to sort it out every morning? What do you do?
So I think it's an evolution. So I'll tell you what I used to do before. You talked about, examples of me in previous life on trying to be successful. And that was really about getting to the goal. So in my younger years, when I was getting stuck, I would question, okay, what's the point of this? What do you want to achieve? Let's go for the goal. Let's go for the end result. So if I've made a commitment to get to win something or raise an amount or achieve something, it's been about that. Yeah. So the ultimate journey towards getting to the finish line. You've trained for this marathon, you're halfway through, you're in pain. Why keep going? Because there is a finish line and you've committed to get to it, and therefore you keep pushing to get to the finish line. So that was, typically the way I would operate. Nowadays, I think I've changed that to more about the reason for being, which is really about being in the now and what can you do at this point in time. So if I am struggling, if I'm questioning whether the goal is worth it and whether I should maybe just give up, I search on now is, okay, what's working now that I can use? Can I put one foot in front of the other? Yes. Okay. So I'll do that. Then can I do it again? All right. Then I'll do that. And then eventually you do get to the goal, but it's focused now rather than focused future. So that's a shift I've noticed in my psychology going forwards when it comes to sort of pushing through when things are tough. So again, with my teams, it's the same thing. It's really focusing what's available to you now. What resources do you have at hand to be able to move one step forwards, irrespective of, how far away that goal might seem.
So you've been involved and you've run an enormous amount of teams, and you've been, I don't know how many teams that you've coached and been involved, but there's hundreds of different teams. So give us some advice, because there's a number of people listening to this and watching this, Nathan, that have just been given an opportunity to run a charity where the culture is not what they want it to be, or there's problems in the charity, or they're starting something from scratch. Or a third thing is, perhaps before coronavirus, everything was going great, and now it's not going so great. So what is your advice for a CEO that has a difficult culture where people are not happy? Are there a few pieces of advice that you would give to a CEO and an organization that needs to change the culture, or is trying to get out of coronavirus right now and raise some money? What are the three most important things that CEO thinks about right now?
I think there are various stages. The way I would do it would be first to get some headspace, get out of the amygdala hijack of being in a stressful situation, so you need to get away from it to be objective. So that's the first step. The neuroscience that explains how, when we're in fight or flight mode, our creativity is it collapses. We don't see the opportunities. We get stuck with the easy route or the low risk route out of it. So it's very important to be able to level set your mind, as it were. So that's typically the first step, and most overlooked. People just go in to try and fix the solution.
Yes.
I prefer to take a step back first. The second part is, once you've got that objectivity, to look at it from different perspectives. So you need to reframe the situation you're in. And this means that either yourself or with your team or with experts, you need to have different viewpoints of the situation to be able to understand the different elements of the issue, for them to be able to choose the right strategies. And if it's about raising money, I think you really need to go down to why you need to raise the money. What's the purpose? And this is what sells emotionally. Why would people give you money? Not because they perceive some sort of emotional attachment to the cause or the reason or your why, to sort of quote Simon Sinek. And I think having that clear why for yourself and believing in it is important. You can't not believe in it and be convincing, whether it's to a donor or to your team. If you're asking them to change their ways, you have to be the first person to demonstrate that fits your belief system, that you would do the same, or you're going to do the same. Then there's different approaches to leadership. So I believe transformation leadership is probably the best way forwards, because it allows you to look at various aspects of leadership rather than pick one. Typically in times of crisis, people want to see the leader that leads from the front, that yells charge and says, follow me. I know where we're going. Now have faith. I think that's not necessarily always the best way. Sometimes being a nurturing leader and helping people grow and find their own solutions is more effective, although it might take longer. So transformation leadership approaches are more effective because what you're trying to do there is transform the way people think. Let's get them to think differently. If you're trying to change a culture is a collection of people's mindsets. It's their collective behaviors. So what you're trying to do is get them to shift their mindset. And so transformation leadership approaches, and there's lots online about that stuff and books that you can read, really is trying to find ways of understanding your people in a way that they are perceived as individuals, but at the same time are interdependent with the rest. So it's really about understanding how we can, as a collective, change together. Because if pockets change, then like a rubber band, it just shrinks back to its previous position. You need to have enough momentum to be able to have change in a larger amount of people to be able to create sustainable change. It needs to build its own momentum, basically.
There's three huge elements that you spoke of there. One is, which I completely agree that very few of us have the foresight and the awareness to be able to do. Step one is to take a step back and give yourself some time, because I learned somewhere a long time ago that we can never make a decision from a place of weakness. In other words, to give ourselves space and get strong again is really vital. And it's hard to do, as you say, because when everybody's shouting at you to make change, for you to then take a few days or whatever it is, for you to really think before you respond is really powerful advice. And the second piece is to really understand the purpose of what you're doing, which I guess, from my work, I understand is difficult for people to really understand sometimes and work out their purpose, but it's vital, isn't it? Especially in these times, we're learning that everything has to be driven by a deep purpose. So that makes a huge amount of sense for me. And the third major element that you talked about there, which I don't think I've ever heard before in 20 years of studying this work, and it just hit me when you said it, was a culture is a collection of mindsets, which is really powerful for me to hear and everybody to hear, I think, because most of us don't understand what culture is. We think culture is something that we can't touch or is really hard to change. But when you simplify it for us in that way, Nathan, and you say that that's what culture is, it's just a group of people and bringing everybody's mindsets to the table to work out our why and our purpose and how we can go forward. That's a really powerful way to look at that. I wanted to ask you more about that, because right now, where our external world is so uncertain, and I think there's so much fear around in the world right now, is just give us some advice as to tell us more about how does somebody find their purpose right now when there's coronavirus and there's all sorts of fear out there. What's the process that people need to go through to really find their deeper purpose?
Well, advice perhaps not, but I can tell you how I do it.
Yes, well, that's a great start. Tell us how you. That's a great start.
Well, I have a model to a certain extent. It's become a model. It was a frame of mind that I used when I was typically at crossroads. What do I do next? Or I'm not feeling great, or I'm out of sorts. Yes. Wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't feel like going to work. I really can't be bothered with this hassle. So those moments in time typically allow me or trigger me to be able to find some headspace. And I use a very simple acronym, which works for me, and I've used with many of my clients, and it works for them to a certain extent too. And it's based on the old philosophy of Ikigai, which is an ancient Japanese philosophy around finding your reason for getting out of bed in the morning. Okay. And it's called the FIRE model, and it's an acronym of FIRE. So it's about lighting the fire every day of your life. And F is for flow. So flow is really about doing stuff that engages you. That's okay. Lights your eyes up. You used that expression earlier. Yes. That is a challenge. That is difficult, So it's the antithesis of flow is boredom. So it has to be exciting. It has to be challenging. And you have to feel that every given day, there is a bit of that. You're getting a bit of dose of excitement. It could be adrenaline, but it also could be dopamine, a feeling of that you're getting things done and you're accomplishing something. You're making a difference. Yeah. And so for me, there has to be, a good day is a day full of flow. And when you're in flow, science also shows that our brain works faster, we're more fluid, more efficient, more creative, so these are good things. The thing is, if you're under stress, flow, it gets suppressed. So you need to be able to understand that that's going to, this burnt out feeling that we get when we're under stress for a prolonged period of time is the fact that we're not getting the right chemicals that would be elicited from flow, for example. So finding flow for me, is very, very important. The second part is the I, which is impact. So flow is for me, I really enjoy being in flow, and it's great. It feels great. But then what difference am I making with that flow? And that's the impact side. So that's the outward side. So am I making a difference? Am I helping people? Am I being useful as a leader? Am I being a good dad? Am I being a good husband? What is it that as a person is creating value? Is the impact adding value. So there it's about measuring it. If it's too intangible, you can't really look back and say, am I making a difference? A lot of people ask themselves that. Well, yes, if you're taking on philanthropic projects and you can see a start and an end, or you're sponsoring something and that is being effective, or you're giving your time to a project that actually is proving to be making an impact, then obviously this is measurable. But it doesn't have to be measurable. In these times of COVID, you talked about knocking on a neighbor's door and asking if they need anything. That's just being selfless, and that's making an impact. Yes. Yeah. So this is the sort of outer side of being happy. Yeah. How can I make other people happy? Or help them grow? The third is R. So R is for roles and responsibilities. So what is my responsibility at this given time? What sacrifices do I need to make because it is my duty? How do I accept responsibility or take responsibility, perhaps when nobody else is taking it? How do I step up? How do I use my skills and my talents to be able to make a difference, to make an impact by taking responsibility? So rather than just wait to be promoted or wait to be asked, it's about saying, I'm going to step up. I may not necessarily be the manager of the team, but I feel that I need to step up and rally people and help them change their culture or grow or develop. So this is taking initiative to take responsibility. And there's a very good reason for that, because when we take responsibility, what we're doing is we're accepting a certain level of vulnerability, that we can make mistakes. We're taking on stuff that could make us fail and make us look bad. And that actually makes us stronger, because when we have that self-awareness to actually take responsibility, if we're doing it for the right reasons, not for ego, then what happens is that we become a different person. We evolve to become bigger than we previously were. We stretch ourselves. We grow. So, saying yes is in a way a good example of taking responsibility. And the last part is E is for excellence or excelling. And this is about effort towards excellence. Can I be better tomorrow than I am today at whatever it is I'm doing? So if I'm looking back at my day, I can look at what I've learned, how have I improved, what have I done differently that has helped me, and tomorrow morning, how will I do it differently? If I'm running a workshop with a group of CEOs or a leadership team, I want to get feedback from them to know how to do it better the next time I'm going to be engaged. So it's always about continuous improvement. And again, this requires you to get honest feedback and open feedback, be open to feedback, be open to all types of feedback. You can pick and choose what you want to take from it, but be open to it, and having a growth mindset. But you can't win everything. You can't be successful at everything. There will be failure, and it's about learning from that failure and moving forward. So the growth mindset fits very squarely in that component. So FIRE, for me, a good day is one where I put stuff in each of those buckets, basically.
So flow, impact, responsibility, and excellence creates a sense of purpose. That's a really powerful way to look at things, because if I'm in flow and I'm excited and I'm creating a positive impact around me, and my intention is to create that positive impact, and then to have responsibility and to live my values at the highest level, and then to raise my standards consistently to get to that level of excellence, you do those 4 things as you do, you're going to find a purpose in there, aren't you? I mean, if you live that way, you're whether you
Yes.
we know it in language, you're going to live a purposeful life. If you're living those 4 elements, you're going to live a purposeful life, or you're on your way.
Absolutely.
To.
Yes, and I think this is, as I said earlier, a purpose is often, in my view, misdefined by an end goal.
Right. It's how you live in the moment. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, a purpose, an end goal can change, but if my purpose of being is consistent,
yes,
then I'm going to live a purposeful life.
Yes.
By doing those things. You see,
yes.
whether I've hit the goal or not. You know. So if in my mind a purpose is a goal, I want to raise 5 million euros to build a school in Kenya. You know,
yes.
That's not a purpose. That's a goal.
Your
purpose is to live by those standards that will enable you to be able to get that goal.
Yes, absolutely. I see that. I really see that. So I have a number of different questions. A few key questions I want to ask you right now is and I don't want to miss this because this is quite phenomenal and there's a lot of lessons in this, is you're now releasing a book which is very exciting about 1 million steps, and that you shared with me is based on am I right in saying that you have run at some point in your life, you've done an enormous amount of exercise, but you've run 27 marathons in 27 days? Is that correct?
27 countries.
In 27 countries, right?
Back to back.
Wow. Yeah. So back to back.
Yeah.
Back to back. So let me just say, so 27 marathons in 27 countries back to back, right? Okay, so that's pretty extraordinary, and I'm really excited to buy a copy of your book to read about the psychology of that, because I've run a half marathon. And I thought, and many of us, and that's not to be sniffed at, that was a major achievement for me. But just tell us a bit more about what inspires you. Most of us are happy with a marathon or 3 marathons, or, what does that give you to put your body and your mind through that level? What does that give you? What does it create in you?
It's a journey. So the reason originally was a purposeful one, because we wanted to raise awareness about volunteering across the 27 EU states. So that's why 27 countries. Okay. And I was chairing the PR sort of side of the government initiative to promote volunteering in the various EU states. And I decided I was going to try and visit each EU state that year and try and do promotion by running a marathon, or running the marathon of that particular town. Yeah. Then I realized it was going to cost me an arm and a leg to be able to get to each country, whenever they had their marathon. I said, so there must be a better way. And I thought of the idea of doing them back to back in one trip, just going for 27 days.
What a stupid idea, over and done with.
That was the feedback I got from many, actually.
Yes.
So then I said, promoting volunteering is not going to cut it when I'm on my hands and knees saying I want to go home. So I decided to raise funds from each country to help children's charities.
That's amazing. That's a great idea.
So when in your mind you're saying, oh, I really don't fancy doing another one, there's people waiting for you on the start line. We had volunteers come in and do a 5K with me and start me off, etc., and donate. We raised a lot of money. So.
There's so many people listening to this that want to raise money in fundraising. And so what I've just learned from that is, if you put the purpose first, if you set about, and because a lot of us want to raise money and we do a black tie ball, or we organize a marathon or a bike ride. But if you create the community first that you want to support, and then you commit to it, then you follow through, then it gives you, at the beginning of that start line of the 17th marathon or the 21st marathon, you cannot let them down. You kind of like burn the boats. You have to follow through, and that's really powerful. There must be a couple of people in your life that have really inspired you. So who are the 1 or 2 people that have been most important in your life, Nathan? And can you give us an idea of What's been so inspiring about these one or two people that have helped you on your journey?
To start off with my parents, my dad teaching me the value of work, and because he did work very hard, and sort of that gave me an understanding that if you want to get things done, you have to put effort into it.
Yes,
they don't just come easy. So he never had an easy life, and that inspired me to make sure that if I chose to do things, I would commit to do them properly and put the time and effort in. At the same time, my mom has a very different personality to my dad. Is much more energetic, much more of a doer, bouncing off the walls, looking for fun. So that was a really good balance. That's why they're so strong together, and they still are obviously together after many, many years, because they have this balancing act between them.
Yes.
Obviously, I gained from both of those. But I think what I like to do. Nobody is perfect, and it's very difficult for me to define someone as inspirational. It's typically either an act or a thing that they do or a characteristic of them that it does inspire me. So what I've done purposefully over my years is try and absorb the positives from people that are making a difference or have inspired me in certain ways. They may in general not necessarily be role models, but they have that one thing that is a take home for me. And so that's really what I've tried to do over these years. And there are many, many people, therefore not two, because these are different traits that you're trying to capture from different people.
Yes.
But, just to give you an analogy, I worked with, as I said, running a large organization with which had people with disabilities, and the resilience of the parents who have very, very severely disabled kids is inspiring. When I'm uncomfortable, to not say in pain, running the 27th marathon, and I think about these people that have marathons every day of their life to get through, just to get their kid dressed to go out the house because they have a challenging condition. These are the things that make you feel stronger, and you realize how much power and strength there is in people who have to go through this sustained adversity. So it's really, what's important is to be aware of what's around you and understand people around you. Be emotionally intelligent about what it is that other people have that you can learn from. They don't have to be a high-profile CEO or an author or a Tony Robbins. They could be, like I said, a parent of a kid who has challenging behavior. This is it. And meeting people who. I remember a particular individual who, as a leader of a business, I went to him and I said, "Listen, I think you should take over this department. I'd like to promote you to the head of this department." And he turned around and he said, "Thank you. I appreciate the trust, but I don't want the job." And I was upset. I said, "Well, I'm giving you a promotion on a silver plate. I'm not making you apply for it. You're going to get a salary increase, etc." And he said, and this is in my younger years, he said, "Yeah, but that's worth nothing to me. What's worth something to me is getting home at 5 to take care of my farm animals." And I went from being upset to being in awe of someone who has his values, squarely pinned on his shoulders, and saying, "This is why I work. I work to go home and take care of my farm." So we sometimes criticize people who are not giving it all to the business and are looking at their watches at 5 o'clock.
The balance of life, absolutely.
It depends. Yes. So lessons learned from people around me all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nathan, I have two more questions, if I may. One is, there's so many problems in the world right now. There always is problems, and there's always opportunity. As far as I can see, in the last 200,000 years that we've evolved as humanoids, as human beings, there's always challenge, there's always opportunity. What do you see when you're sitting here in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic in the world? What do you see as the biggest challenge that we have as 8 billion people on the planet right now? And how do you feel best as leaders we should manage or change or overcome this problem? So what do you think is the biggest challenge facing us today? And how do we manage or overcome it?
Well, to be oversimplistic, I think the biggest challenge we have is selfishness. We when under stress, it's human nature. You talked about those hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. We haven't evolved yet from being instinctive animals. So under pressure, we typically pull towards selfishness or self-reliance. And this is often at the detriment of community. So if we want to be truly evolved, what we need to do is suppress that innate animal instinct of being selfish and taking care of your own, and actually see how you can evolve over that and be useful to others. So I think leadership needs to be of that ilk. Yeah, how can we as leaders demonstrate through our own behavior that it's not about how much money I'm going to make or status I'm going to get or power I'm going to achieve or ability to overcome others who are currently weak because of a situation, and actually say, you know what, no, my duty here is to lift others up, whether it's my team, whether it's making sacrifices for the good of others, whether it's your clients and making sacrifices on your profit line to be able to support your clients at this difficult time, whether it's eating into your savings to make sure you continue to pay your employees, whether it's forfeit your next dividend to be able to make sure that everybody is gainfully employed. But whatever it is that you feel you can do that is yours to give is what we should be looking at. And I think for me this is the mantra of leadership. You are there to serve. So it's not about just being in front and yelling charge. There's a lot more to it.
And I think you've just very skillfully and with a lot of heart, I think you've just answered my final question, which was, if there was one piece of advice or one thought that you feel with all your years of leadership that you'd give us, that you feel is most important, what would it be? And I believe that I've had the answer in that, to create a deep sense of service leadership and to eradicate such selfishness. But I'll ask you the question, and then sorry I spoke for you, but you gave me a great answer. So if there was one thing that you'd share with us right now that you think is the most important value that we focus on, what would it be?
I think underpinning what you said and what I said earlier is the fact that we need to be the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be. And that will translate into leadership or creativity or artistry or mastery or whatever it is that is our potential and who we can be. So it's all about making sure that you have an open mind, self-awareness, and really putting the effort in to not just being okay, but trying to push your particular limits to become better.
Yeah. Yes.
And if better is being better at sitting still, then that's good too.
Yes, I definitely need to work on that. But thank you so much, Nathan. It's been really powerful to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much. There's so much there. I really appreciate your time and your energy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.